Welcome to Building Reddit. I'm your host, Ryan H. Lewis. 2022 was a banner year for Reddit and its community. So what better way to celebrate it than to throw bananas at users and to brag about trips to the moon? Well, that's one way to describe the experience that was Reddit Recap 2022. Recap was a cross-functional collaboration between many teams at Reddit that culminated in a personalized experience for users that highlighted how they spent their time on Reddit that year. But Reddit has a ton of users, so we're talking about a huge effort to not only process all the data, not only create software that can handle the traffic, but also to be customized for users from all walks of life all over the world. And I wanted to know more about how it came together. So for this episode, I spoke to Reddit employees in product management, data science, engineering, and marketing. To start with, I wanted to know how the project came together. So I spoke with Rose, a group product manager.
I'm Rose. I'm a group PM on our growth team. I specifically cover channels or how we communicate with users through push notifications, emails, and our inbox tab.
For people who may have missed it, how would you describe Reddit Recap?
So Reddit Recap is a personalized review of the year to help highlight the incredible moments that have happened on the platform and to also help our users better understand their individual activity over the last year on Reddit. So it's presented as a personalized series of cards highlighting key data such as the users' top posts and comments, how much time and distance they've spent on our feeds, some top events and topics they engaged with, and basically what makes Reddit theirs.
What did you work on for Reddit Recap?
So Reddit Recap came out of a cross-functional hackathon project actually 2 years ago. And my team has led this project in the last 2 years, given our focus on personalization delivery. And we thought this was a great product to provide users personalized content and bring them back into their favorite parts of Reddit. So as the PM on the team, I worked on scoping the project, the user flow, the content, the context, as well as evaluating and helping to execute on all the different cross-functional opportunities. So this product touched upon a lot of different teams at Reddit, from community to data to marketplace to platform to internationalization. And so I sort of helped bring all these teams together to build this for our users.
I did not know that Recap came out of one of our hackathons. That's so cool. Were you a part of it, and how did it happen?
I was a part of that. It was a team of 2 PMs, one front-end engineer, a back-end engineer, animator, designer, and we sort of mocked it up in a week and presented it out. I think at the time we won one of our internal hackathon awards. And then because it was so relevant to my team and how we communicate and personalize the Reddit experience for users, we definitely wanted to build it out full scale. The first year was pretty intense. We built something that many other places have large teams and lots of time to do. And we did it very scrappily and hackily, but it was a huge success. The team really worked their butt off, made something extremely creative and awesome. And that just sort of validated that we should continue to invest in this experience.
When you're crafting the user experience of Recap, how do you figure out what kind of cards to include or data to highlight?
Sure. So we actually do cross-team brainstorms. We've also done this sort of 2 years now, so we have a sense of, what worked last year. For example, measuring feeds distance in banana scrolled really just hit it off last year, and is something we have really leaned into across the recap now. But we talk with all of our teams and come up with different categories and themes that we want to include, from moderator experience to global events to contributions and karma, etc.
How do you differentiate Reddit Recap from something similar like Spotify Wrapped?
Spotify Wrapped is definitely an awesome product and feature and part of the inspiration around this. But I think what makes Recap different is because it's multi-directional. Our users are not just passive consumers of their content like on other platforms, but can also be participants or even contributors in larger events like r/place or Eurovision. And they're very impactful to other users' experiences and sense of belonging and community. So Recap can help remind you how you really earned karma on the platform and made the platform special and unique.
Aside from it being really fun, why does Reddit do something like Recap?
So, because Recap helps remind users of some of their highlights and value, both from and to the platform, we've run this for 2 years now. And each year we both get users who may have dropped off or forgotten about Reddit coming back, as well as existing users are encouraged to increase their engagement and continue to do what they're doing on the platform.
You mentioned that this is the second year that Reddit did a personalized recap event. What was different this time compared to 2021?
Yeah, there were two main things that were different this year. One is we've been very excited about international growth on Reddit. So we've really approached Recap from a more global perspective this year. We've translated the whole experience into our supported languages and added geolocal cards. So events and stories that are specific to certain countries or regions, such as maybe trending capybara content in Brazil or Europe specific Ukraine fundraisers. And we wanted to help highlight how users contributed and learned from their very local communities. A second update we did this year was to broaden the experience from just one launch date. So prior to launch, we had a banana themed desktop game and some other small Easter eggs, including avatar gifts and a new subreddit, which Rachel, on our marketing team, will probably talk more about.
It's been a couple of months since Recap launched, but have you started planning for next year or are you still recovering?
There's always a recovery period after launch. So we're still working through what next year will look like. But we always want to improve on what we've already done. So I'm sure it will be bigger and better.
Reddit Recap 2022 gave Reddit users a personalized view into how they used Reddit throughout the year. As you can imagine, that would require a whole lot of data. I was curious what it took to boil all that data down and make it so fun to look at. So next I spoke with Julie, a data science manager. Here she is.
My name is Julie Zhu, and I am a data science manager here at Reddit.
What did you do for Reddit Recap 2022?
Yeah, so I pulled and vetted all of the data points that go into the individualized cards for the experience.
Where did the data come from to populate the Reddit Recap cards?
Yeah, we used a lot of engagement and clickstream data. So if you are a Reddit user, we looked at everything you clicked on, everything you were looking at, you were scrolling through, and all the fun data points. We really wanted to go a level deeper. So we were able to look at different categorizations of the stuff that you were looking at. We were able to tap into different personas or roles you might have on the platform. So whether you were a mod, whether you were an international user or a US heavy user, and also really looking at things that we thought you might enjoy more. So looking at dwell time, how long you stay on a certain page, whether you just leave immediately. So any engagement related data we scraped and built Reddit Recap with.
Did you have to do anything special to align data that came from different clients, like the mobile app and desktop?
Yeah, we have our Cookson data is implemented across mobile and web. So it was actually quite easy, just pull in from everything. There are a couple things that were a little bit different. So for example, like our very popular bananas feature, we need to know how many inches you've scrolled on the site. And so the inches categorization is different on mobile and web. So we did have to like kind of pick apart, what post did you look on web or what post did you look at on mobile? And we had to use some complicated back of envelope math to get to a bananas number like that.
What did the process look like to transform all that data and make it fit into the recap cards?
Yeah, it was a very tight collaboration across several different folks. So across design, our brand creative team, our product team, our eng team, right? To also look at like size constraints and whether it was physically feasible to stuff a bunch of data points into our backend experience and our services. So there was a lot of back and forth on, hey, like, can we adjust this card or can we change the definition of this card or, oh, this number doesn't look quite right. And doing a lot of like the validation as well as the tweaking of the branding, the the formatting of the numbers, which is something quite unexpected, I feel, because like numbers are kind of just numbers, but when you are trying to put numbers into a service with limited space, you want to make sure that your numbers are of a certain size and they're small, and we're only putting in the data that we need to fuel the experience and not anything like special, which is quite difficult for me as a data scientist, because when I build tables, I'm like, I want everything because I want to look at everything. But for this particular experience, we needed to keep it very, very lean and very, very sparse. I would also say like during the validation and like kind of like the back and forth of the data validation, it was quite interesting because we had a couple of cards where we were benchmarking a user's performance stats against everybody else on Reddit. And we needed to make a call whether like, hey, is this card going to be a troll, or what is the right threshold for us to kind of cut off the data? So for example, it's like you are in the top X% of karma earners this year. If we say you're in the top 99%, like, is that like a Reddit brand thing? Or is it like, hey, like Reddit thinks, you suck. Like, so I think there were some points like that where we're kind of debating on like, how would we feel if we got that card, and trying to dog food our own experiences that way too.
What were some of the technical challenges you faced pulling all that data together?
Yeah, I would say to folks who have worked with clickstream data before, you will know that it is absolutely ginormous. I would say that that's probably the biggest challenge for Reddit recap data this year is getting data to run, trying to figure out ways on how to parallelize certain processes or how to optimize code such that it would run within a certain time. And then, just making sure we're breaking out the pipeline into pieces that make sense. I think there were a couple of scares towards the end of the development cycle, like right before we hit production, where it's like, we need updated data, but the data wasn't running. Like it ran fine before, but we made some kind of changes and our data really blew up, or like a lot of users joined. Maybe we're pulling in a lot more users. The data was just not running. And so we really had to kind of hunker down and say, which pieces do we need for sure? Where can we kind of cut off this pipeline to make sure at least part of it ran, and then we can try to optimize the data manipulation or like the new like column mutations on top. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing. I would say some other challenges probably would be just like the back and forth on like card definitions. Like sometimes like brand creative would like a certain messaging. Whereas the data that we pulled just like didn't quite fit what they were imagining for that card. And so trying to find alternatives or like different ways of pulling the data to get kind of creative with, oh, hey, this will still get at the same messaging, but at least the way we're pulling it is a lot quicker or more efficient, or the way we're pulling it is more in line with how we would interpret the data points.
So every time they wanted to change, would you have to re-pull all the data?
Thankfully, we could at least try to prototype the data on some of these base tables first. And if they're like, all right, this looks good, we can, release all of the changes to the rest of the data. But what was tough was like sometimes like we needed like a user with a very specific set of experiences to even test the data. Like I need a mod that like, also had a lot of international experiences. And we're just like, where can we find this person? Just like scouring through the data to find that one column that's not null, and then use that as our test case going forward.
Were there any differences in how you use the data between Recap 2021 and Recap 2022?
Yeah, 2021, I would say, is our first large-scale foray into a recap experience. So we focus primarily on like getting the data looking right, like making sure they have a fun experience, making sure branding and creative were on point. This year, we really wanted to up-level some of our data points. So we took a couple of risks. So I know a lot of other platforms like having like benchmarks on their users' experience, like you were in the top X% of users for this particular card. So we try to do that as well. We try to say, hey, like you earned this much karma, but like is that in the top X%? Are you in the top 10%? Or, are you just like someone who's like looking around? So we did try to implement some of those like fancier like rankings into the cards. I would say we got a lot more creative with how we're thinking about our international users experience too. Last year was very like US centric or global centric, where it's like everyone kind of got the same experience. But this year we were thinking about like, what were some cool moments on Reddit that didn't really happen anywhere else? So things like, Eurovision, right? That's something that here in the US, we don't really hear that much about. Maybe it's a post on Reddit, but in Europe, it's like a very big thing, and all these countries come together and rally for their country or their favorite artists. So we tried to think about like really cool moments that we could pull data for, and to make that into a card for some of our other users too.
Were there issues you ran into when trying to support the recap experience in non-English languages?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the data front, international data at Reddit is to even find like, let's say, a non-English post is quite hard. Like we have a lot of tools and models to help us identify some of these posts, but for example, I think it was for our local hero card, or I think our local hero card. We were trying to say like, hey, which subreddits are primarily non-English or like, internet or international subreddits. And it was quite hard because like I'd pull it using our current like model, and they would classify, hey, this subreddit is non-English. And we'd read the post and we'd say, hey, this is English. Like we can totally read this post. I'm pretty sure this is not Portuguese. And so it was kind of going back and like manually curating, hey, this is probably some post that one is brand safe for us, but two also is in the language that we are targeting, so that we can capture some of our international audience members too.
Were you able to reuse any of the data work you did in 2021 for Reddit Recap 2022?
Yeah, there were some queries that we were able to reuse, primarily the cards that carried over. So our bananas card, our very popular bananas card, we were able to reuse, which is very exciting, as well as like our top post of the year, top comment of the year. But though we did have to make some tweaks to that card, I would say generally the queries are pretty much the same. Our karma polls are all the same, which is very nice, giving and receiving awards. So I would say we were probably able to reuse maybe 30% of it, which is lower than I expected, but still saved me a bunch of time. So still very happy that we were able to gather some kind of following around bananas and karma and awards. So very excited about that.
Reusing 30% is pretty good. What percentage of the work do you think you'll be able to reuse for 2023?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna just say 30% because I'm hoping that they'll like. I feel like some cards like your top communities this year, right? Or bananas or our mod cards. I feel like those are probably gonna be another like just gonna come back again next year, just because we think they're really really cool cards to see. But I have a feeling some of our other cards, like are you on Team Doggo or Team Kitty, like those ones probably will get switched out. But those, I did have a very good time pulling the data for that, just like vetting like our chonkers or some of these other animal subreddits. Like it's quite fun to kind of just like go through and validate these other cards as well. But yeah, my guess is 20-30% for next year as well.
Oh, now I gotta know, were you Team Doggo or Team Cat?
Oh, Team Doggo. I have a pup named Pepper, so we're just looking at all the dogs subreddit.
Nice. Were there any other insights that came out of pulling all that data that maybe wasn't recap related?
Yeah, I thought something that was really cool about this year's recap was that we were able to create a moment around recap and influence a lot of the other team's strategy around how they were thinking about growing their product area. So not only was I pulling data for our recap consumer experience, I also pulled some data points for our social team so that they can create some more content on our social accounts. So if you're following Reddit on Instagram, some numbers there. We got some billboards in Times Square. Those are all numbers that came out of recap. And even outside of that, I think we had some teams from our bets team reaching out about, what are people's top abilities or, top topics for this year so that they can think about how to segment some of their users and create more rewarding NFT experiences for Redditors next year.
As a software engineer myself, I knew that pulling all the recap data was not the end of it. The engineering teams would then need to build the experience for users in the Reddit platform. Jonathan and Puneet explained how the data was used to build the end user experience.
My name is Jonathan Elfar, and I'm an iOS engineer at Reddit.
My name is Puneet Rathore, and I'm an engineering manager at Reddit.
What did you work on for Reddit Recap 2022?
So I was the tech lead for the project and also worked on the iOS implementation with another iOS engineer. My job was to plan out the project, come up with a timeline and milestones that engineering could work on, ensure engineering was focused on the milestones, make sure they're on track, and resolving any issues along the way.
I was the engineering manager for Recap and was responsible for ensuring the successful delivery of the project. My main focus was to ensure all engineers were unblocked, they had clarity on what they needed to do. And also, fun fact, I was the engineering manager for the first iteration of Recap last year as well.
Just like Reddit itself, the Recap experience existed on multiple different clients. How did that happen?
Yeah, so Recap was a quintessential example of a tight-knit collaboration with engineering and design. Once we received the initial Figma designs from the designers, we kicked off the engineering design process to plan out our work. We had to collaborate with the cross-functional engineering teams to ensure we can call out to their services. We also worked with our project managers to create milestones for the project. And we use these milestones as checkpoints to ensure whether we were on track or not. So to get all our engineering efforts kicked off in high gear, our backend engineers spent a significant amount of time working on the GraphQL schemas. These schemas unblocked our client engineers and they could start executing to build the various cards in the designs.
We built the experience for our iOS, Android, and web platforms. Each client would hit our servers and the backend would return the same data to each client, and each client would render the UI in their own respective languages and frameworks. So as Puneet mentioned, we had this GraphQL schema that was really helpful for the clients to get started. We were able to mock out some data from early on so clients could easily work with the API and start creating the UI. So our designers would create these extensive mock-ups detailing the various flows a user could be in, the types of cards you could get, and how the whole experience would work. And it was up to the engineers to figure out how to best create the code to match those mocks. And so the front end portion was basically entirely rewritten this year, supporting new card types, a new vertical scrolling format, animations, a holographic effect on the ability card, supporting different languages, all using modern UI frameworks. Another thing that was the same across platforms this year was animations. These were coordinated very carefully across clients using custom animation curves, custom timings, ensuring all the animations were consistent across the three platforms.
It sounds like a lot of teams that had to stay in sync. How did the teams coordinate together?
From a project management perspective, we were running stand-ups twice a week with the entire Recap team, with the engineers, designers, data, and product folks all in the same meeting. We used this meeting to raise any issues, call out any blockers, ensure that everyone was on the same page regarding any of the changes that happened in the last week or so.
Yeah, speaking of changes happening, there was tons of changes that went on during the development of this experience. We had this change log that was very beneficial for us. So as you can imagine, with a project this large, there's tons of changes that would happen over the course of development, tweaking UI, tweaking the animations, tweaking how sharing looks and works. All these things, we made these small decisions over the course of the project, and also working across time zones was a challenge, and having disparate conversations in various threads on Slack. And basically the changelog helped us organize all this stuff. So the changelog also had a section for sign off where engineers were expected to review it, look at it, and sign off and saying that they acknowledge the change and that they're going to implement it. So this changelog was super beneficial for organizing all the various discussions and changes that happened for Recap.
The QA team this year was a huge part of Recap, especially since the experience supported several languages. We had a dedicated QA team and an international localization team who were helping us test every aspect of the experience. We planned several playtests throughout the project, which were centered around the various milestones of the project as well. We use these playtests to spot check telemetry and eventing, basically to be confident that we were going to be successful. We built out a product dashboard in collaboration with our data science team during the development phase, so we could start seeing events come in as we tested and fixed any issues that we saw. I think building this dashboard was extremely useful, and we could confirm that we had all the data that we needed to be able to learn about how our users were interacting with the experience.
So, Puneet, you worked on Reddit Recap 2021. Was there anything you were able to reuse in 2022?
Yeah, I think on the backend side, we were definitely able to reuse some of the bones of last year's internal APIs that were serving the Recap experience. Even though we were serving different data this year, we were able to use some of the methods and like API endpoints, and just like in general, like how we worked with all of the different services. We were able to reuse the same services to build the API this year.
Yep. And this was really helpful on the clients to get started because we had a lot of these pieces in place, and we just had to make some tweaks to get it ready, bring it back for this year. And on the front end side, all the UI was rewritten from last year, compared to last year. But the only things that were in common were basically networking, models, telemetry. So some of the business logic we were able to reuse. And just build some new awesome UI around it.
What were some of the new things you had to build to support Reddit Recap 2022?
So for this year's recap, we built a ton of new things. We had vertically scrolling cards compared to last year's was horizontally scrolling. We had these custom animations, which we talked about, holographic effects on the ability card, and localization, where we translated the strings into different languages. We also needed to adjust some of the previous cards, removing some of them, adding some of them, tweaking some of them. We had new cards specifically for users outside of the US to make the experience more personalized and localized. We had new cards for things like last year's April Fool's event for r/place, a new avatar card showing how your avatar has progressed over the past year on Reddit, entertainment and topic cards showing users' top interests. So all these new cards kind of added to the experience, making it more complete and more engaging. We also rewrote the UI using modern technologies like Jetpack Compose on Android and SliceKit on iOS, which is Reddit's fairly new in-house framework for feature development. These were really, really nice to work in, enforcing solid architecture and design principles. We also implemented a fun lead-up experience this year in the weeks before we launched, where a banana would appear as you're scrolling your feed on Reddit, and clicking the banana would take you to get some recap-themed items for your avatar. And we also had a fun Halloween game on web. All these things built hype and excitement and just led up to the actual launch of the experience. And other than that, there was a couple other things. The holographic effect, the ability card, we basically added some fun, shiny, a shiny overlay to the card as you tilted your phone or moved the card around on web, and gave it a 3D look and a fun trading card appearance that we were really going for. And so that was fun to build. And also the animations this year just made the whole experience much more fluid and dynamic, things popping around as you're scrolling, and just made the experience fun overall.
On the backend side, we did a couple of new things this year. We used Postgres as our database this time to serve data to our clients. Since the data team was continuously iterating on the data, we needed a way to quickly be able to re-upload the data into the database. So to facilitate this, we created a simple script that could reload the database quickly. And throughout the experience, we were discovering subtle data bugs and inconsistencies in the experience. So these scripts came very, very handy to refresh the database. We were also very proactive about load testing. We spent a good couple weeks battle testing our backend APIs so they could handle the predicted load on the day of the launch. And just to give you a little bit of insight, our load tests were targeting a peak operate of about 4,000 requests per second. So wasn't like super high, but like wasn't low enough that we could just assume it worked. So, we had to make sure we were doing some real production load testing.
For 2022, Reddit Recap aimed to support multiple languages. What did it take to do that kind of internationalization?
Right. This year, we made it an explicit goal that we wanted to support other languages than just English. So we supported all the other various languages that Reddit supports, such as French, German, Portuguese, Italian, and Spanish. And this proved to be a tremendous challenge, mainly supporting long strings on all the different screen sizes that Reddit can be viewed on. So we have so many different Android devices that people use Reddit on, so many iOS devices that we support, and they're all various sizes. And our designers create the mock-ups using English text with a standard size phone. And so really exploring all the different variations that the experience could be viewed on, all the different devices. We really had to be careful and make sure that everything would fit. And so we didn't want things to be truncated. We wanted you to actually read the text that we've worked so hard to show you. And so we implemented this strategy to shrink things down, to scale things down, depending on your screen size. So everything would be shrunk, the images, the text, and also some other things like moving the share button from the bottom to the top really helped give us some more vertical space. So that was a big challenge. Another challenge was the text formatting. To accomplish localizing the experience, we would translate the strings on the server once instead of translating them across all the clients. And so they get translated once and they get sent down in their translated fashion depending on where how you have your geo settings set up. And so, or depending on where you are. And so the strings would be translated. And a big challenge there is the designers wanted text highlighting on specific parts of the strings. So a challenge is the clients do not know which part of the string to highlight because the string was translated on the server, and the part that we want highlighted might be a different amount of characters depending on what language we're in. So we built some simple formatting system where clients could, or the backend, our servers can signal to the clients, hey, this part should be highlighted, and the clients can just blindly highlight it. Now this worked well. It did lead to another issue where the text highlighting, if it was too close to a punctuation mark, like an exclamation mark, it would be too close together and it would look really bad. So we added spaces around the highlighting so to fix that issue, but then the spaces would get highlighted. And then if there was a line break, you would have a space that's highlighted on the previous line and it would just look ugly. So anyway, we fixed all these issues, but it was just a small example of how things don't always go as you plan.
Yeah. The other thing that made supporting multiple languages complicated was that every time we changed an English copy for any card, we had to double check all the other languages and if the translations were, updated accurately. So this made updating copy changes like a super involved task. Thankfully, we had a really good internationalization localization team who were helping us with these changes, and they were like available for a long period of time during this project. So they were really, really helpful in catching these subtle language specific bugs.
Were you able to use any existing internationalization tools?
So we have an internationalization team at Reddit, and they have built a lot of these translation services that exist. So the backend for Recap was able to integrate with their translation service to essentially add translations for Recap specific strings. And that made it super easy to kind of update the strings, add strings, remove strings.
Yeah, I'll just add we've been working on internationalization for a while now and building out the tooling we need to support it across our back end and front end. And so we've definitely been building on top. We built on top of some of the work that was already done. So yeah, it's all built on top of each other.
What were some of the things that you had to do prior to launch?
A few things come to mind. We changed the icon of the apps, the mobile apps. So the icons were themed to have a narwhal on them, which was our recap theme. And if you go into the app, there would be a narwhal icon and it was all cohesive. And we had to make sure everything was lined up with our feature flags so we could just turn it on when we launch at a specific time. And all code, we strove to get it done by a week before Thanksgiving. So we set a deadline for ourselves according to our timeline, accounting for the milestones, the play tests, fixing bugs. And we basically like hit our goal, and it made us go into December much easier and not having to rush at the end. So I'm thankful we planned everything out well. And we had a 5 a.m. launch, which was very early for us, but it was a good sacrifice because we had to make sure we launched the experience at the same time as some of our other marketing materials were going out, like the blog post or the video that went out. And it was overall a really exciting day.
Yeah, the other thing we did was like we made sure like no teams were deploying the day of the launch. We wanted to freeze our salons, which is the way we deploy at Reddit. So we reached out to all of our dependent teams and stakeholders and told them how important this launch was, and they were super willing to hold deploys. The day after our launch, we also started our notification campaigns, both on emails and push notifications, and this is the driver to recap. A lot of traffic immediately comes to the platform because of push notifications. So this is when our backend teams kind of were on guard and looking at our health metrics dashboard to ensure that our services were holding up. It was a lot of fun. When we launched, you're looking at the various social media posts that users were posting and just looking at how they were interacting with the experience and sharing how they either loved it or didn't like it, comparing us to other competitors. It was really, really fun. The crescendo of this entire project, just watching users interact with the experience.
With all the work that product data and engineering put into making an awesome recap experience, it would have been a shame if no one paid attention. But that was definitely not the case, as the marketing, communications, and branding teams created ads, videos, and hype to ensure that everyone knew about it. I really wanted to know how that Reddit recap banana puppet video was made. So I spoke with Rachel, the director of consumer product marketing.
I'm Rachel Weber-Calloway. I am the director of consumer product marketing at Reddit.
What did you work on for Reddit Recap?
I ran the marketing for Reddit Recap. So marketing, everything includes everything from how we think about the product, how we want to position it, all the way to making sure that everyone is aware that it's happening, that they're excited about it, and that they participate in the event.
So the Reddit community has a very particular way of communicating and interacting. Was there some kind of strategy behind how you marketed Reddit Recap to users?
Yeah. So when we think about marketing to the Reddit community, it's tricky because they are notoriously averse to being marketed to. And this is obviously a little bit unique because we're bringing them something that's part of their experience that they look forward to every year. But when we're thinking about how we want to get our users really excited and involved in an event like Reddit Recap, we really want to make sure that they feel engaged and like they are a part of the experience and they are part of building the experience, not just the audience. We want them to feel invested. We want them to feel like they're helping craft, what Reddit Recap looks like. And that's kind of where we started. And so we wanted to think about what were the things we knew that were going to excite the community really early, and who was the audience we wanted to reach first. And we kind of decided that the main focus of the early parts of our campaign were going to be around people that participated in Recap last year and really leaned into it. And one of the things that we saw come out pretty early last year that really landed with our users was the idea of how many bananas you scrolled. It just like instantly caught on with the community. People were sharing it in all different subreddits. It was a badge of honor, a badge of shame, badge of pride, whatever you want to call it. And so that was something where we started, which is like, okay, this idea of bananas really feels right. And also feels nice and meta, which is perfect for Reddit. And so we decided that kind of that would be the crux of what we thought of for Reddit Recap when it came to the marketing. And that manifested in a few different ways. Actually, let me back up for a second, because there's something else I should add that I'm missing, which is Reddit Recap is partially a product execution, in that we have the look back, the individualized look back. But another component of Reddit Recap is our video that we do that kind of looks back on the year on Reddit. And that includes an original song. It highlights top posts from the year. That video was produced by Dong Chen and our consumer marketing team. And we wanted to make sure that there was a through line between the story we told there and what was happening with the product. And so we kind of thought, okay, well, how do we do that on Reddit in a way that makes sense? And it's like, well, duh, we should start a community. We should build a subreddit. That's how Reddit would talk about it. That's how they would do it. And so we decided to launch r/recap. And when we were thinking about how do we program something like that, how do we build a strategy around it, it was like, okay, we start with just the weirdest, most meta stuff, get them thinking like, what's going on here? What is the space? Some people will pick up on what it is, and really priming the pump for the content drops that were to come. And we slowly built on that and started to reveal more and more, okay, this is about Recap, a little more on the nose in terms of the messaging, eventually sharing the video, eventually sharing that Recap was live, and then opening that community up to our users to allow them to kind of create generative content around the idea of Recap. So sorry, that was a very long-winded answer. But the idea is like, the strategy really is figure out what we wanted to do to engage the community, figure out a creative theme, which was bananas, and then think about, okay, where do we share all this in a way that's going to really resonate with the Reddit audience?
Did that strategy come together after the Recap experience was defined, or was it more of like a holistic strategy for Recap?
I think Recap like itself needs to be engaging, right, to be successful. In order to get people to participate in the actual Recap and share it and, you know, get the number of users we wanted interacting with the product, the actual product experience itself needed to be really engaging. So that was definitely a part of what that team was thinking about, how they were planning. We have a creative studio inside of Reddit called Orange Red, and Orange Red worked on both the design and copy and look and feel of the Reddit Recap product, as well as all of the marketing assets that go along. So they're kind of the through line. And so while the product team is thinking about engagement from a kind of user experience standpoint, right? What are the entry points? What is the feel of this product? What do the swipes look like? What does the animation look like? What is the share functionality? The marketing team is thinking about engagement in terms of how do we get people to participate in the entire moment? So not just clicking on their Recap and going through it and viewing it, but sharing it, talking about it, posting about it in communities, and creating that kind of FOMO so that people across the internet are like, wait, what's happening? What's Reddit Recap? Do I have one? And creating that momentum behind it. So definitely both things need to be engaging.
This really sounds like a lot of planning and work. When did everything kick off?
Well, we had our first meeting at the top of the year to kind of look back on Recap 2021 and think about what learnings we had and what we wanted to do differently. I can't speak to when the product work kicked off. The marketing work kicked off about 6 months before it went live. So yeah, it is a big project. It is a long project. You know, it ramps in terms of how much work and how much time it requires of the team. But it is one of, if not the most cross-functional project that happens at Reddit. And when you've got a lot of different stakeholders from a lot of different teams, you need that time to allow everyone to come together, to come on the same page, and obviously account for everyone's schedules. So yeah, it was about a 6-month lead time.
With as many communities as there already are on Reddit, I'm actually surprised that r/recap was available.
So it was dormant. Somebody had used it, but it was dormant. Fun fact, there is r/Reddit request subreddit that anyone can use. If you find a dormant channel, you can request to take over that subreddit. So we made the request there to take it over. And we were also very pleased. We had a lot of backup names ready, but it was really easy for us to grab it because no one was using it. r/recap was born.
So there were a lot of original illustrations, videos, and memes that were created for Reddit Recap. What was the process like generating and coordinating those different creative assets?
Yeah, so we had a lot of different partners and a lot of different assets when it came to marketing Reddit Recap this year. So as I mentioned, we had the creative assets inside the product itself. So all of the visuals and animations that you saw inside of r/recap, the community, we shared original memes, some text content that was generated in partnership with our community team. We also shared avatar accessories that were designed by Orange Red. All of that was done in-house for the lead up. But as we looked to the kind of kickoff of r/recap, when things really started to get going, we actually worked with a few external partners as well. So RGA is the ad agency that produced our year-end video. They also work closely with Orange Red to make sure it kind of had a similar look and feel. But they are the ones that helped us produce that incredible video. We worked with an artist called Coke Youngblood, who wrote an original song for that video, which is quite excellent. And then we also created assets for things like billboards. We had a 3D billboard in Times Square that showed Snoo being trapped by a falling pile of bananas, and other 3D assets that lived in New York subways, that lived in additional billboards that showcased 3D visualizations of some of like the year-end stats, right? How many people ask questions in r/Ask Reddit, things like that. And those were designed by an agency called Toast, which, fun fact, is run by a former Reddit employee. So they did great work there. And then we also had a lot of social assets. So on Reddit's social channels, because yes, there are Reddit accounts off Reddit. We have a u/Reddit IRL handle on Reddit. We also have Reddit TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And so we really wanted to have some fun this year with the assets that we shared on social and experiment a little bit. And we worked with an agency called Byte to think of some out of the box ideas. My personal favorite was we came up with Reddit banana puppets, not Reddit bananas, regular banana puppets. And the idea was to imagine a world where bananas used Reddit and measured their time scrolled in humans, the way humans measured in bananas. And the videos are weird and wonderful, and involved a life-size Snoo holding the 2 bananas at some point. So we did a lot. We created a lot of assets this year, way more than we've ever done in the past. And it was a true Herculean effort. So I think I just named 4 agencies plus internal teams. And all of that was shared across a number of different channels, like I mentioned. So out of home, so those are the billboards you see out on the street, social, paid social, on platform, on Reddit, off platform, and other socials, to really make sure that the word was out about Reddit Recap.
I know you can't really predict the future, but have you had any thoughts about marketing things you might want to do for next year's Reddit Recap?
It's hard to say exactly what it will look like. As you said, it's hard to predict the future. We learned a lot this year in terms of what really works, and what lands with our community, and what message goes the furthest, right? One of the great things about a subreddit community is a simple meme. One of the top performing posts was a meme that I whipped together in about 4 minutes because we needed some content And it's one of the top performing posts in the subreddit. That cost us $0, right? Except for the 4 minutes of my time and the Adobe license that I have. That said, as you mentioned, those banana puppet videos, our social videos were amazing. And I think they help elevate the Reddit brand in a way that's really important beyond just the scope of recap, right? From the marketing team, we're also thinking about how do people perceive Reddit? What is the story we want people to think about when they think about Reddit? And marketing, even if it's specific to a single event, it's still about Reddit in general. And so I do think we want to continue to explore and push the boundaries of how Reddit shows up in our users' everyday lives outside of their time on the platform. So we'll definitely continue to think about new and fun ways we can create content for them and with them.
What was the plan for bringing Reddit Recap to the market?
Yeah, it probably won't surprise you when I say it was a lot of cross-functional work to bring Reddit Recap to the market. So when we say bring it to the market inside of Reddit, we're talking about a few different people. So of course, we're talking about our users, right? They are the part of the market we care the most about, Redditors and new users and existing Redditors. So we want to make sure that we're communicating to them. Potential users, right? People that are not really aware of Reddit. That's still something we want to consider when we're thinking about marketing campaigns. We're thinking about partners, our advertising partners, our business partners, people that care about what happened on the platform over the past year. Maybe not their own individual impact, but they care about the trends and themes from the year. And then we're thinking about press. Press is always really interested in our year-end look back, that component of Reddit. So the teams that are responsible for that are the marketing team, our community team, who helps us message and strategize around how we talk to our users, and then our communications team, who is responsible for the relationship that we have with press and communicating to press. And each one of those teams is responsible for kind of honing and crafting the message, bringing the salient information for their respective audiences, and figuring out the best way to deliver that message. So as I mentioned with marketing, that was social channels, that was the r/recap community, that was the video. For the community team, they were really a huge partner with us in building the r/recap community, not just in thinking about the programming, but how do we moderate a space like that? That community grew at an exponential rate. It ultimately grew to over 400,000 members in that community in less than 3 months. So moderation there is super important. So that's the community team helping with the team of moderators, helping with content. We also shared this in our kind of more official corporate community, which is r/Reddit. So that was something that the community team did a lot of work on. And then press, right? So we have a report that we generate that kind of has all the top stats, top performing communities, top growing communities, what were Reddit's favorite TV shows, what were their most upvoted, what were the most upvoted AMAs, what were Reddit's favorite sports teams. We put all of that into a report, and then that report is shared with journalists who can kind of determine how they want to write about those stats. And then we also share with journalists a look at the recap product. So we put together, information on the product itself, what it's going to look like. They got an early look at some of the screens of the recap experience. We talked to them about why we're building what we're building, and what we hope Redditors will pull from it. And then, they choose to write about it or not, or they sometimes wait and see, how the product's being talked about. So there's a lot of different angles when we think about communication. And ultimately this year, we saw 100% positive sentiment across press, which is pretty remarkable. And inside of the community, I mentioned we had over 400,000 people join. It really was a huge success when we think about, how the product was talked about and how the experience overall was talked about.
That's really great. What were some of the other responses to Recap in 2022?
Yeah. So overall, positive. Press, obviously 100% positive. But yeah, our users loved it. I think everyone was excited to have it back and to have even more stats to dig into. The bananas were once again a huge hit, as were trips to the moon. We did measure your time spent on Reddit as potential trips to the moon. Karma earning was a big theme this year. What percentage of karma earners were you? We saw a lot of fun memes show up in the community around that, or the people who are proud lurkers and earned 0 karma for the year. But then ironically posted about earning 0 karma, earning them a lot of karma. So their recap next year will look slightly different. Yeah. And you know, what we hoped for in r/recap as we opened it up to community posts, meaning that anyone could share and post in that community, was that we'd see memes, and we saw tons of memes. And that's usually a sign that Reddit is enjoying themselves. When they get really meta and start making content about the content, and creating their own culture of jokes, like that's when we know it's really landed. And bringing it back to the strategy question, ultimately everything we do is in service of reaching that point. How do we get Reddit to talk about this and be excited about this themselves? The best marketing is one that doesn't come from a corporate voice. It comes from people who care about a product and are excited about it themselves. And we definitely saw that the community lit up with all that type of content as we released that. And that was really exciting to see.
Aside from a general positive response, are there other markers that you used to measure how successful Reddit Recap was?
So we're obviously thinking about the number of people we reach with the product. This year, we had 12 million users participate in Reddit Recap, which is incredibly exciting and a number we're really proud of and really happy with. We also measure against things like press sentiment, like community sentiment, community engagement. We like to think about how many users we brought back to the platform that maybe hadn't been on it for a while. New users, people that made accounts because of all of this. So all of those are things that we measure when we look at the success of Reddit Recap.
Reddit Recap 2022 was a huge undertaking at Reddit, and hearing about all the work that went into it just makes me even more impressed than I was before. Although the Recap 2022 experience is over, you can still view some of the memes at r/recap and view the videos on the Reddit YouTube channel. And make sure you stick around for more bananas with Reddit Recap 2023. I did have a couple more questions for my guests that weren't recap related. Like, if they were on a deserted island and only had access to one subreddit, what would it be? Here are their answers.
The subreddit that I will always stand is r/aw or r/aww. It was the first subreddit that introduced me to Reddit, where I spent an entire day scrolling endless photos of cute, wholesome animals. And it's just a great, soft, positive experience to the platform. And I could spend all day on it.
I think normally I would say Am I the Asshole, but I will go for best of Redditor updates for because I like to see some some conclusion and some closure to some of these hot and spicy posts. So I'd probably just read that all day on a deserted island.
I would say one subreddit on an island. Oddly satisfying. I really like it's. I know it's a big one, a popular one, but it's there's a never-ending amount of content on there that's super interesting, and I love to be satisfied in odd ways. And overall, it would keep me occupied, I think, on the island.
If I had to pick, I would pick a practical choice, which would be our survival. I'm an urban man. Like I grew up in the urban environment and I have no skills to survive in the wild. And I'll take whatever information I can get from folks on Reddit to help me survive and thrive on this deserted island.
So this is pretty much an impossible question. I think I looked and I'm subscribed to, I honestly don't even know, like thousands of subreddits. So this is really hard. But I think the one community that I couldn't live without, and you certainly cannot find anywhere else, is r/the pack. That's the_pack. It is honestly a community best experienced rather than described. It is a community of exclusively original memes, meaning you have to make them yourself. The memes feature a lot of flaming skulls, or flaming people on motorcycles. I'm sure there is a phrase or like a t-shirt that's associated with this type of imagery. I don't know what that word is. All the memes, they call each other MFers, and they all howl as one pack. And all of the memes are incredibly wholesome and supportive. And it's all about just doesn't matter who you are, what you like, what you do. You get on your hog and you crank it with the pack. And I don't know. They speak in all caps lock. You're not allowed. You got to keep that caps lock on, brother, in the community. And it's only on Reddit. And so, yeah, I think if I'm on an island and I need to stay entertained and I need to feel like I've got my people, r/the pack is it.
I also had to know what was their favorite meme. Their answers may surprise you.
My favorite meme is probably the one of the dog sitting in a fiery room saying, "This is fine." Sometimes that definitely feels like the life of a PM, where you just have to take what is happening and make it work. And so that resonates a lot with me.
This is such an old one, but I really do love the one with the dog with the house on fire, and it's like wearing a little hat and it's just like, "I'm fine." It's fine. Because I think that is very useful in a lot of use cases. Like so not just like, trying to like compare, like there's the one where like the brain's like exploding. Like I feel like that's a very specific use case, but it's fine. It's just so classic and universal. So I think I'll go with that one.
I'm a big fan of starter pack memes. I really like how they can just encompass like other memes, or it's a meme within memes, and it can describe an entire generation or an entire thing that people share in common, or I feel like starter packs unite us in a way. So I like that meme.
I'm a huge Monty Python fan, so whenever I see any Monty Python references on Reddit, I love them. So yeah, those are some of my favorite memes on Reddit.
Probably aging myself a little because this is not really a meme we see much of anymore, but it is the Wednesday toad. It was a toad that was posted every Wednesday. It says, "It is Wednesday, my dudes." I think you water guy was the first one to post it, just because it was Wednesday, my dudes. That was the reason for it being. It's not like a meme format where you can like make it mean other things or use it to convey other things. It's just a toad who tells you when it's Wednesday, and for its simplicity and its stupidity, I love it very much.
And that's it. Thanks to everyone who answered my questions in this video: Rose, Julie, Jonathan, Puneet, and Rachel. So what did you think? Does it sound cool to build Reddit, one of the largest sites on the internet? If so, check out our open positions at redditinc.com/careers. And to get more behind the scenes info, check out Reddit's engineering blog at reddit.com/r/redditeng. And I wanted to end this episode a little differently. So here's the song created for the Reddit recap video. It's called "A Beautiful Mess," written by Coke Youngblood and performed by JDP. Take care and don't rock out too hard. I'll see you in the next episode of Building Reddit.
Let's get it started with a Chris Rock slap. Cheers to a new year. Yeah, we're finally back there. Turtle loving more memes. Holding out for the queen. NPCs on Elden Ring. Stop on the clock, it's a 10, that's a win, man. Found a bunch of kittens, ended up saving them. Draw Michael Trout every day, catch a new AMA, all the games that we play. It's 2022, what a beautiful mess. We're all fighting for our rights, won't expect any less. It's protecting all your bees, your first embroidery. Coming out the tunnel, be amazing what you see. 2022, what a beautiful mess. 2022, it's a gorgeous wreck. 2022, what a beautiful mess. 2022, it's a gorgeous wreck. We got new music, Taylor Swift, Weird Dolly painting pics. Gas prices, gotta give it, that reunites with his kids. R.I.P. Technoblade, Minecraft just won't be the same. Riding tracks without the train, Love Island every day. On the round, avatars, World Cup going hard. Maybe more bananas, please. Seven spins are in too deep. 2022, what chaotic blessing. Stack up your cash, we might hit a recession. James Webb, deep in space. like everything everywhere all at once. Watching House of the Dragon, A Lord of the Rings, Euphoria, man, we've seen the strangest things. And not so perfect, yeah. There's been some tears, but also courage and bravery in the face of fear. Standing up for what you really know is right. Never leaving your people in the middle of the fight. 2022, what a beautiful mess. 2022 is a gorgeous wreck. 2022 is a beautiful mess. 2022, what a gorgeous wreck. 2022, when it's said and done, has been kinda crazy, but we had some fun. The world bounced back like a cat out the box. Kid had a balloon, but then watched it pop. Good days and bad, but we did our best. So much beauty and magic wrapped up in this mess.
Building Reddit is an official podcast from Reddit. This episode was produced by Ryan H. Lewis. Thanks for listening.